My car was gone before I even knew it was for sale. I found out through a text. Not from my mom, from my cousin, who sent me a photo of my car parked in front of someone else's house 2 streets over with a "sold" sign still on the windshield. I called my mom immediately. She picked up on the second ring, completely calm, and said, "Oh, yeah. Your stepdad needed the money. It was just sitting there. Just sitting there. I had been at university for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. The car was registered in my name, insured under my name, bought with money I saved from 3 years of part-time work. I left it at her house because parking at my dorm was expensive and she told me, and I remember her exact words, 'Leave it here, the driveway has space.' I was crying on the phone. She told me I was overreacting. 'You should have taken it with you if it mattered that much,' she said. We needed the money and it was just sitting in the way." I asked how much they sold it for. She paused. Then she said $1,400. My car was worth at least $6,000. I had a mechanic friend confirm the value before I even left for university because I was thinking about selling it myself. $1,400. They practically gave it away, and they didn't give me a single cent of it. I asked to speak to my stepdad. She said he was busy. I told her I wanted to report it stolen because legally, that's what it was. She laughed. Actually laughed and said, "You're going to report your own family to the police?" Like I was the one doing something wrong. That laugh is what I keep coming back to. Not the crying, not the shock, just that laugh. It told me everything about how seriously she took what they did. I called a lawyer friend from school. He told me I had a real case for theft or at minimum civil recovery since I had the title, proof of purchase, and insurance records all in my name. My stepdad had no legal authority to sell that car. None. He just did it anyway because he figured I was gone and what was I going to do about it? I sent my mom one message after that call. I told her I was not reporting it to police if she transferred me the fair market value within 7 days. I gave her the number. I kept it short. I kept it calm. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten anything else. I just laid out exactly what I needed and what would happen if I didn't get it. She called me 8 times in 2 hours. Every call was a version of the same thing. "You're being dramatic. He needed it more than you did. This is why families fall apart. I can't believe you do this to us." She never once said sorry. Not once. She kept flipping the conversation so that by the end of it, I was somehow the person causing damage to the family by wanting compensation for something stolen from me. I stopped answering after the 8th call. The 7 days passed. No transfer. No apology. My stepdad texted me once, 4 days in, and said, "Hope you're not still upset lol." That was it. I didn't go home for winter break. I told my mom I wasn't coming and she called my aunt, my grandma, and 2 cousins to tell them I had abandoned the family over a misunderstanding about a car. My grandma called me and said I needed to forgive and move on. My aunt sent me a paragraph about how my stepdad has had a hard year financially and I should have compassion. Not one of them asked me what actually happened. They just took her version and ran with it. I haven't been home in almost a year now. My mom sends me messages on holidays. They always say something like, "Miss you," or "Hope you're well," and sometimes, "Still don't understand why you're doing this." She genuinely acts like she doesn't know. Or maybe she does know and she's decided confusion is easier than accountability. I'm honestly not sure which one is worse. The thing is, I'm fine now. I sorted out transportation. I built my own space at university and it's quieter than I expected. I didn't go home angry. I went home not at all, and there's a difference. You don't slam a door when you close it for good. You just close it. She still calls it a misunderstanding. So, am I the butthole for treating a theft like a theft? My mom showed up in my campus cafeteria holding a folded printout of my post like it was a court summons. She dropped it on the table in front of me, right next to my half-eaten sandwich, and said, "Loud enough for the people at the next table to hear. So this is what you think of your family." I knew immediately someone had sent it to her. The usernames were blurred on the printout, but I recognized phrases from the comments. One line was underlined in blue pen: "Selling someone's property behind their back is theft." She had circled it 3 times. I just stared at her and asked how she found me. She said my aunt drove her because, "You don't answer the phone anymore and we needed to clear the air." That phrase, "clear the air," set something off in me. It sounded so harmless, like we were here to talk about forgetting a birthday, not thousands of dollars worth of my property being sold without me knowing. She sat down without asking and launched into it. "You made us look like monsters online. People are calling us thieves. Your stepdad is devastated." I said, "Did I write anything that wasn't true?" She ignored that. She started reading from the paper like she was quoting evidence. "You wrote, 'They stole my car.' That is an ugly word. We did not steal. We helped." She looked around like she wanted witnesses. "You should have mentioned how much we have done for you." There it was again, that shift. Not what they did, but what they felt I owed them. I told her calmly, "You sold something that legally belonged to me, without my permission, for a fraction of its value, and kept the money. That is stealing." She flinched like I had slapped her. Then the tears came, on cue. "So I am a criminal now? Your own mother? After everything I sacrificed?" A few people were clearly listening. It was embarrassing but weirdly grounding. I realized how insane it sounded, out loud, in a public place. If a stranger told me this story, I would be outraged for them. That helped me stay steady. I told her, very quietly, "This isn't about what people online think. This is about you still pretending you didn't do anything wrong." She slapped the printout. "You got the internet involved. Do you know your cousin called me crying because she saw strangers calling me a bad mother?" You have poisoned our family. I said, no, I told the truth. The car sale is what poisoned things. Then she dropped the line that changed everything. Well, if you had just answered your phone, we never would have had to lie about whose car it was when we sold it. I froze. What? She realized what she said a second too late. She tried to backtrack. I meant, it just got complicated. The paperwork, you know how they are at the dealership. I cut her off. You told them it was your car. She started talking fast. We needed the money, and they said it was easier if the person present was the owner, and your stepdad was already embarrassed enough asking for an advance, and we thought you would understand because you were in college now and you don't even need a car there, and the driveway, you know, it was getting complaints from the neighbor. They said it's an eyesore, and we had to make a decision. There it was. No misunderstanding. No confusion. They straight up pretended to own my car to get the sale through. I said, so you lied about ownership, took the money, and now you're mad that I told people what you did. She snapped. We did what we had to do. You are selfish. Do you know your stepdad pawned his tools to pay the electric bill while you were out here at university eating in cafeterias? I looked at my basic meal and wanted to laugh. Instead, I said, he could have sold his own car then. She scoffed. That car is how he gets to work. I just let that sit for a second. She heard herself. It didn't matter. She just shook her head like I was being ridiculous. Family helps family, she said. You should be grateful we didn't make you sell it yourself and hand it over. We protected you from that. I realized there was no version of this where she saw me as a separate person. In her mind, my things were hers if she felt she needed them. Any boundary I set was selfish. I told her, still calm, I'm not coming home again. Not for holidays, not for visits. Not as long as you think you had the right to do that. That was when she dropped the nice act completely. Her voice went cold. Fine, then you are cut off. Don't call me when your fancy college friends drop you and you need help. We raised you, we fed you, we put a roof over your head. That car wouldn't even exist without us driving you to those jobs back then. It was our investment too. She stood up to leave, but then she leaned in and said quietly, you think you are better than us now. The internet told you so. Then, louder, I am ashamed of you. She turned around like a movie scene and walked out. My aunt, who had been hovering nearby pretending to check her phone, shot me a look like I had kicked a puppy. She didn't say a word. They both left. After that cafeteria scene, I did what I had hinted at in the original post but held back on. I filed a police report. I brought everything. Title in my name, photos of the car, screenshots of my mom texting, we sold it, and, he needed the money, bank statements showing no transfer, and, the kicker, a photo of the printout where she had underlined that internet comment and written in the margin, we are not thieves. All that did was put the word thieves next to her own admission. The officer was surprisingly straightforward. He said, you are the registered owner. If they sold it without your consent, that is at least fraud on the buyer and theft from you. We might not be able to get the car back if the buyer was innocent, but we can look into charges. I told him I wasn't trying to ruin their lives. He raised an eyebrow and said, they already made choices that have consequences. You were just acknowledging them. They called my mom for a statement. I know this because my aunt messaged me a string of texts. I hope you are happy now. They came to the house. Your stepdad is so stressed he had chest pains. How can you do this to your own family? Not once did she say, we messed up, or even, we are sorry. It was all about what I was doing, to them. Later that week, my mom finally texted me directly. You have escalated this too far. If you drop this, we can talk about some money later when things calm down. That was the closest she had ever come to offering to pay me back. Not an apology. A negotiation, on her timeline, after I made the legal system notice her. I replied, you had 7 days before I filed anything. My boundary was clear. I am not dropping it. She sent back, then we are done. I stared at those 4 words for a long time. It hurt, but it also felt like the most honest thing she had said in this whole mess. From what I have been told through extended family, the buyer on my old street is being contacted too. The story is getting around, not because of my post, but because cops in uniform asking about a car gets the neighborhood talking. Apparently, my stepdad is furious the most, not about me, but about the fact people now see him as the guy who sold his kid's car. I didn't make that image for him. He did. I'm not dancing on their misery. I still feel sick about it, honestly. This is not how I pictured adulthood, sitting in a dorm room typing statements about my mother into a police form. But every time the guilt starts creeping in, I go back to that moment in the cafeteria, her saying, we never would have had to lie about whose car it was. She admitted it without realizing it. That was the moment something in me shifted for good. There is no fixing trust like that. You don't talk it through when someone has already shown you where you land on their priority list. So yeah, I guess this is the part where I live with the fact that my mother thinks I chose strangers and laws over family. But honestly, I just chose myself for once, and it feels weird, and quiet, and a little bit like walking out of a house that was always on fire and only now noticing the smoke on your clothes. If this is what being the villain in their story looks like, I guess I can live with that. She started by calling me a traitor. The first message after the police visit was just, you betrayed us, and then a screenshot of my original post with a bunch of angry reactions from relatives in the family group chat. No explanation, no apology, just that word. Betrayed. Like I had switched teams in some game instead of reacting to them selling my car. My aunt had dropped the link to my post in the chat with the caption, so this is what she thinks of us. My mom replied with a wall of messages about how ungrateful I am, and my stepdad sent one line, let her see how far she gets without family. I know all this because my cousin, the one who originally sent me the photo of my car on that other street, forwarded me screenshots. Seeing them joke and rage about it hit harder than the sale did. I spent that night going down a rabbit hole of other posts about parents selling cars that weren't theirs and people being told to go to the police. The next day, the officer handling my report called to say they had spoken to my mom again and to the buyer. The buyer was apparently shocked. He had been told my stepdad was helping his daughter out by selling her old car because she had upgraded. He paid in cash and thought he was doing a struggling family a favor. The officer said the buyer was angry enough that he was willing to cooperate with whatever needed to happen, as long as he did not get in trouble. He kept repeating that he never would have bought it if he had known I didn't agree. My mom texted me again not long after that call. They are making your stepdad look like a criminal. He could lose his job if they find out. Do you really want that on your conscience? Then, if you drop this, we can talk about paying you something when things settle down. But if you keep going, there is no coming back from this. I read that over and over. The part that stuck wasn't the threat, it was paying you something. Not what they owed. Just something, like scraps. I replied, what I want is the amount you got for my car. At minimum, you had that chance before I filed anything. She left me on read for hours. Then, we used that money. It's gone. Groceries. Bills. You want us to starve so you can feel right? I said, no. I want you to admit what you did and take responsibility. Then we can talk about how to fix it. But I'm done pretending it's just a misunderstanding. She answered, you sound like a lawyer, not my child. A few days later, my grandma called. She rarely calls me directly. Her voice was tired. She said, your mother is falling apart over this. She says you are sending police to her door. I explained what happened, step by step. The sale, the low price, the lack of consent, the threats when I asked for compensation, the cafeteria scene, the admission about lying to the buyer. There was a long silence. Then my grandma quietly said, she should not have sold something that was not hers. I almost cried from relief. Instead I asked, so you understand why I reported it? She sighed. I understand why you were hurt. I don't like the police part. But I cannot say you were wrong. It was the first time anyone in my family said anything close to that. Apparently she went back and confronted my mom, because the next message I got from my mother was a long paragraph accusing me of turning her own mother against her, and airing dirty laundry. She called me cold. She dragged up random past things, like times she grounded me as a teenager, as proof I had always hated her. It struck me how fast she moved from, we needed the money, to rewriting our whole history to make me the villain. None of it had anything to do with the car, it was all about painting me as a long-term ungrateful child who was just waiting for an excuse to hurt her. My stepdad finally reached out too. Not to apologize. He called from a number I didn't recognize and opened with, you happy now? They might charge me. I said, I didn't force you to sell my car. He snapped, you left it there. You never used it. You have your fancy campus life. We thought you moved on. We did what we had to do. I said, then own that. Stop acting like this just accidentally happened. He went quiet for a second, then muttered, you're punishing your mother. That was his focus. Not the fraud, not that he signed papers for something that wasn't his to sell, just that this made my mom upset. I told him, she is a grown woman. You are a grown man. You both made a decision. The consequences are not me punishing you. They are the result of that decision. He called me heartless and hung up. The legal side is moving slower than the emotional fallout. As far as I know, it is still an open investigation. The officer told me they are looking at it as a civil matter with potential criminal elements, and that depending on what the buyer wants and how my parents cooperate, it might end in charges or a formal agreement. In the meantime, the family group chat has turned into a circus. My grandma is apparently the only one saying out loud that what they did was wrong. My aunt keeps writing, I would never call the police on my own mother, and blood is thicker than paperwork. One cousin messaged me, I get why you're mad, but did you have to involve the law? I asked her, what would you do if someone else took your car and sold it? She replied, that's different. I didn't bother arguing. The strangest part is how quiet my life feels now. Without the constant calls and guilt trips, I have space. I go to class, eat cheap food, study in the library, hang out with people who think your parents sold your car is insane instead of normal. I am not pretending this doesn't hurt. It does. There are moments when I put my phone down after another angry text and feel like a horrible person. Then I remember my mom in that cafeteria, casually admitting they lied about whose car it was, and I remind myself nothing I am doing came out of nowhere. Right now, contact is limited to necessary messages about the investigation. I told my mom in one text, until there is accountability, I am keeping distance. I am not blocking you, but I am not engaging in guilt or blame. It felt weirdly formal to write that, but I needed it in writing for myself as much as for her. She replied, enjoy your new life. Don't come crawling back when it falls apart. I read that and thought, if my life falls apart, it will not be because I refuse to accept being stolen from. So yeah, things are messier, louder and somehow calmer at the same time. They are facing real consequences, even if the legal side never turns into a dramatic scene. People in their world know what they did. The buyer knows. The police know. My grandma knows. And I am still here, going to class, figuring out adulthood without the safety net I thought I had. It is not the version of family I wanted, but it is the only one that feels honest. My mom decided to make it public. Not just family group chat public. Church public. Neighborhood public. The kind of public where people you barely remember start messaging you out of nowhere with opinions. I found out because someone from back home sent me a picture of a post on my mom's profile. It was a long paragraph, over a sunset background, about how some children forget who fed them and run to outsiders and the law of the second life gets hard. She never used my name, but she mentioned selling a car to keep lights on, and being treated like a criminal by your own blood. The comments were a mess. A lot of praying for you, and kids these days have no respect. One person wrote, if my kid ever called the cops on me, I'd disown them on the spot. I sat on my dorm bed, phone in my hand, and felt my chest tighten in that familiar way, but it was almost like watching someone else's life. My grandma actually commented too. Just one line, a car can be replaced, trust is harder. That was it. No sides taken, just that. My mom replied to her with a passive-aggressive, some people forget the full story, and then a bunch of people liked my mom's response. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't want a comment war on a sunset background. Later that day, I got a message from someone I went to high school with. Hey, is that about you? Did your parents really sell your car? She followed it with, that's messed up if it's true. I just answered, yeah, it is about me. And yes, they did. She sent back, damn, and then a voice note where she just said, I'm so sorry. Your mom always seemed strict, but I didn't think she was like that. That always seemed strict hit me. It made me wonder how much people had clocked over the years that I just called normal. The buyer contacted me again too. He said the officer had told him he might have to bring the car in to be photographed and inspected, and maybe even give a formal statement. He sounded exhausted. He said, I just wanted a cheap, reliable car. I didn't sign up for this family drama. I apologized to him, even though I wasn't the one who lied to him. He said, I know it's not your fault, but I have to miss work for this. Then he added quietly, your folks did you dirty, kid. Hearing that from a stranger stung in a different way. Like it made it more real coming from someone who had nothing invested in the story. A few days after my mom's sunset post, my grandma called again. She said, your mother is angry I won't take her side, online. I asked what that even meant. She said, she wanted me to write that you made this up. I told her I would not lie. Then she paused and said, she is saying very ugly things about you to people. I need you to be ready for that. I thought I already was, but I was wrong. Because then my mom started telling people I stole from the family by forcing them to pay me back money they could not afford. She left out the part where she never actually paid me anything. She told one of my cousins that I planned this for months, like I went off to university rubbing my hands together waiting to call the police on her. Somehow, in her version, the car was a test and I failed. My cousin sent me a screenshot of a private message my mom had sent her. It said, she always resented that your uncle helped more with your school things than we could. She thinks she is better than us now. Don't let her poison you. Reading that made me feel physically nauseous. Like she'd taken every insecurity I'd ever had and weaponized it. At the same time, the investigator emailed me asking for any written proof that the car was mine, plus any communications about the sale. I'd already given most of it, but I went through my old emails and found the original insurance confirmation with my name, the financing paperwork I had scanned, even a photo of me the day I bought the car, grinning with the keys in front of it in her driveway. Pulling that photo up hurt. The younger me in the picture had no idea where that driveway would lead. When I sent everything, the investigator replied, thank you. This helps clarify ownership. That was it. Dry, professional, weirdly grounding. There was this split in my life. On one side, my mom's dramatic sunset posts in Guilt Storm, and on the other side, plain facts in black and white on a form. The more she escalated publicly, the more I pulled back. She tried calling one night, late, after a bunch of her posts had gone up. I let it go to voicemail. She left a long message. Started off sounding eerily calm. You are destroying this family, she said. You have no idea who is reaching out to me, what people are saying. Your stepdad can't sleep. I can't go to the store without worrying someone has seen what you wrote. Is that what you wanted? Then her voice cracked, and she said, I carried you. I fed you from my body. I gave up everything to raise you. And you repay me by dragging my name through the mud over a car. I listened to that message 3 times. Every time, the same thing hit me. She never once said, I shouldn't have sold it. It was all about what I was doing to her, never what she had done to me. I didn't call back. I texted instead. I will talk when you are ready to acknowledge what you did and not attack me for reacting to it. Until then, I am keeping communication in writing. It felt cold, but anything else turned into her twisting my words. She responded, so now you think you're too good to speak to your own mother on the phone. Then, you are breaking my heart. Then, you are letting strangers on the internet run your life. I put my phone face down and went to the library. On campus, this whole thing has started to bleed into my real life more too. One of my roommates walked in while I was rereading the voicemail and asked if I was okay. I told her the short version. Parents sold my car behind my back. I filed a report. Now they're acting like I'm murdering them socially. She just said, that's twisted. No long speech, just that. Then she asked if I needed a ride anywhere that week. That small, practical kindness almost broke me more than all the guilt messages combined. Meanwhile, my grandma keeps trying to hold some middle lane. She told me she told my mom, you were wrong, and my mom responded by not speaking to her for a day. Then she called her crying about how everyone is turning on me because of that girl. That girl, me. I could hear the defeat in my grandma's voice when she said, I am old. I do not have the energy to argue with her like you do. That part kills me. I hate that my choice to stand up for myself is making life harder for the one adult who is actually being honest. The officer called again, this time more serious. He said, we have enough to pass this to the prosecutor to review. That doesn't mean charges yet, but it's moving forward. He asked, again, if I still wanted to proceed. There was this pause on the line where I realized this was another one of those moments I couldn't walk back. I thought about my mom's posts, the buyer missing work, my grandma stuck in the middle, my stepdad pretending he was just some helpless passenger in all of this. I thought about that photo in front of the car, how proud I had felt buying something that was mine. I said, yes, I want to proceed. He said, okay, then the next step is out of our hands for a while. After that call, I sat in the quiet of my tiny room and waited for the next explosion from home. It didn't take long. My aunt messaged me, your mother says they might charge your stepdad. Are you really doing this over a used car? She followed it with, you will regret this when he's gone and you can't fix it. That last line was like a knife. Threat, guilt, and future blame all wrapped together. I wrote back, I didn't tell him to lie and sign things that weren't his. If something happens, it's because of his choices, not my report. Then I put my phone down before I could be dragged into a back and forth. She replied anyway, you used to be such a sweet girl. It's funny how sweet always meant never questioned anything. Right now, it feels like everything is tightening. More people back home know some version of the story, even if it's twisted. The legal side is creeping along. My mom is fighting ghosts online while refusing to look straight at what she did. My grandma is trying to stand in a river that is clearly rising. And I'm here in this weird in-between, waiting to see which way this actually breaks, knowing whatever happens next is going to change things for good. The prosecutor's office sent a formal letter. My mom called me 11 times that morning. I know because I watched the screen light up and go dark, while I sat at my desk with the email from the investigator open on my laptop. He had forwarded me the basic outline of what was moving forward. Fraud in connection with a vehicle sale. My stepdad's name, not my mom's, was the one on the documents, since he was the one who physically signed as the seller. I sat with that for a long time. Not happy, not triumphant. Just sitting. On the 12th call, I picked up. My mom's voice was strange. Quieter than I expected after everything. She said, they are filing something against your stepdad. No greeting, no setup, just that. I said, I know. She said, you need to tell them to stop. I said, I can't do that. I gave a statement. This is their process now. She went quiet for a few seconds, then, do you have any idea what this does to a person? His record, his job, all because of a car. I didn't argue. I just said, it was my car. She hung up. My grandma called about an hour later. She sounded tired in a way I hadn't heard before, like the kind of tired that doesn't come from bad sleep but from carrying something too heavy for too long. She said, your stepdad is talking to a lawyer. Your mother is barely eating. I am not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I am telling you because I don't want you to find out later and feel like you weren't warned. I told her I appreciated that. I told her I was sorry she was in the middle of it. She said, very softly, I told her months ago this was going to happen. I told her to call you, apologize, pay you back. She wouldn't listen. So here we are. There was nothing to add to that. We stayed on the phone a little longer, mostly silence, and then said goodbye. The formal outcome came a few weeks later. My stepdad was charged with a misdemeanor, not a felony, related to fraudulent sale of a vehicle without legal ownership. His lawyer worked out a deal. He avoided jail but got a fine, probation, and a mark on his record. The fine amount was actually close to what I estimated my car was worth. I don't know how his lawyer framed it, but part of the resolution required financial restitution to me. I got a check in the mail. It came in a plain white envelope with a return address I didn't recognize at first. No note, no letter, just a check with the correct amount made out in my name. I held it for a while before depositing it. It felt weird, like closing a tab at a restaurant after a really bad meal. The money was never really the point by that stage. The point was that someone, somewhere, on paper and officially, had acknowledged that what they did was wrong. My mom never said those words to me directly. Not once through this whole thing. After the case resolved, she went silent. No more angry texts. No more sunset posts. No more calls. For about 2 weeks, total quiet. Then she sent me one message, the case is closed. I hope you feel better. That was all. No period at the end, like she got tired halfway through. I read it a few times trying to figure out what she was actually saying. Was she being sarcastic? Resigned? Genuinely hoping I felt better? I still don't know. I didn't respond. My grandma told me later that my mom was devastated and embarrassed, and that my stepdad's coworkers had found out about the charge somehow. She said my mom cried for days. I believe that. I also believe it was mostly about the humiliation of being seen, not about what they had actually put me through. My aunt stopped messaging me entirely after the case closed. I think she realized she had been too loud in defending them when the facts were public. Last I heard, she was staying out of it. My cousin, the one who had forwarded me screenshots from the group chat, messaged me to say she was proud of me for standing up for myself. That meant more than she probably knew. Back at university, life kept moving in that ordinary, necessary way that doesn't care about your family drama. I sat exams. I helped a friend move into a new apartment. I ate bad cafeteria pasta more times than I want to admit. Small things that added up to a life that was mine, not borrowed from someone else's idea of who I should be. I got a car again, eventually. A second-hand one, older than my last one, bought with part of the restitution and part of what I had managed to save. The first time I parked it and walked away, I remember checking over my shoulder without thinking. Then I caught myself and almost laughed. Nobody was going to touch it. I was in a different city. I was a different version of myself. The hardest part to process wasn't the anger. Anger had a shape. It had somewhere to go. The hardest part was the grief, the slow, heavy grief of realizing that the version of my mom I had always hoped existed probably never did, or if she did, she was buried under something I couldn't reach. The woman who stood in a cafeteria and casually admitted she lied to a buyer, who made post after post on social media about being victimized, who called me 11 times and then said, "I hope you feel better," like I was recovering from a cold. That was the real version. Not meaner than I thought. Just more real than I had allowed myself to see. I blocked her on social media. Not out of anger, just because watching her posts started to feel like standing outside a window of a house you used to live in. There is nothing there for you but the habit of looking. My grandma and I still talk. She never chose a side and I respected that. She is the only one from that part of my life who still feels like actual family. She asked me once, quietly, "Are you okay?" "Really?" I told her honestly that I was working on it. She said, "That's all you can do." Then she asked if I had eaten enough that week and told me to buy something warm when the weather changed. That felt like love in a way none of the other calls had. I have thought a lot about what I would tell someone in the same position. Not as advice, just what I know now that I didn't then. The people who gaslight you about a thing they did will also gaslight you about your reaction to the thing they did. They will make the fallout your fault. Every step you take to protect yourself will be reframed as an attack on them. And the louder they get, the more they are hoping you will cave to shut them up. Staying calm is not coldness. It is the only way through. There is no neat ending to this. My stepdad has a mark on his record now. My mom has not apologized. The car is gone and the replacement is not quite the same. My family is fractured in a way that might not fully heal. But I am also, genuinely, okay. Not the kind of okay I used to perform to make things comfortable for everyone else. The real kind, where I wake up and the first thing I feel is not dread about what message might be waiting, what boundary might be tested, what version of me I need to shrink down into to survive a conversation. That kind of okay is worth more than I knew how to measure before all this. One thing I keep coming back to. I left a car in a driveway because I trusted that someone would treat my property with basic respect. That trust was broken. I reported it, stood through all the noise, and ended up with the truth in writing and an official record that I was right. And still, for a long time after the check arrived, my mom's last message sat in my inbox unread. "I hope you feel better." I finally deleted it a few weeks ago. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't anymore, and I didn't want to keep something around just to prove I had been through it. So yeah, that's where it ended. Not with a big scene or a phone call where everything was finally said. Just a check in a plain envelope, a deleted message, and a car in a parking lot that belongs entirely to me.